Moscow, February 2015. Security cameras captured something impossible. An ATM machine began spitting out $100 bills like a broken slot machine. No one had inserted a card. No one had entered a PIN. No one was even standing near it. But this wasn't an isolated incident. In Bangkok, Mexico City, New York, and dozens of other cities, ATMs were experiencing the same mysterious malfunction. They were hemorrhaging cash, and no one knew why. Within hours, banks across 6 continents were reporting impossible transactions. Money was vanishing from accounts, transferring to untraceable destinations, and ATMs were obeying commands from ghosts in the machine. This was the work of Carbanak, a cybercriminal organization that had spent 2 years perfecting the ultimate bank robbery. They never carried guns, never wore masks, never triggered alarms. Instead, they had discovered something far more powerful: how to rob a bank by becoming the bank. The Carbanak operation began not with a dramatic heist, but with a simple phishing email. The year was 2013, and a small team of hackers in Eastern Europe had grown tired of small-scale credit card fraud and identity theft. Their leader, known only as Anunak, had a different vision. Why steal from bank customers when you could steal from the banks themselves? The first phase was reconnaissance. Carbanak didn't target bank vaults or security systems. They targeted something much more vulnerable: bank employees. A carefully crafted email would arrive in an employee's inbox, appearing to be from a trusted colleague or vendor. The subject line was always mundane: updated procedures or new compliance requirements. But attached to these innocent-looking emails was Carbanak's secret weapon, a sophisticated piece of malware that would later be called one of the most advanced financial cyber weapons ever created. When the unsuspecting employee opened the attachment, thinking they were reading a PDF about new banking procedures, they unknowingly installed a digital Trojan horse that would give Carbanak unprecedented access to their bank's entire network. Within minutes, Carbanak had a foothold inside the bank's supposedly secure network. But this was just the beginning. The real genius of their operation wasn't in the malware itself. It was in what they did next. For weeks, sometimes months, Carbanak would do nothing but watch. They had installed keyloggers and screen capture software on infected computers, allowing them to observe bank employees' daily routines like invisible security cameras. They watched how tellers processed transactions, how managers approved transfers, how security systems operated. They learned employee names, shift schedules, and internal procedures. Carbanak wasn't just hacking computers. They were conducting psychological surveillance. They were learning to think like bank employees, to act like bank employees, to become bank employees. What made Carbanak so dangerous wasn't their technical skills, though those were impressive. It was their patience, and they spent months learning each bank's unique culture and procedures before making a single fraudulent transaction. When Carbanak finally began their theft operations, they didn't act like external hackers breaking into a system. They acted like internal employees conducting legitimate business. If a teller typically processed wire transfers at 2 p.m., Carbanak would initiate their fraudulent transfers at 2 p.m. If a manager always approved large transactions with a specific sequence of clicks, Carbanak would replicate those exact mouse movements. To anyone monitoring the bank's systems, Carbanak's activities looked perfectly normal. They had become digital shapeshifters, indistinguishable from the real employees they had been studying. Carbanak's theft strategy involved 3 simultaneous attack vectors, each more sophisticated than most cybercriminal organizations' entire operations. Attack Vector 1: Direct transfer fraud. Using their access to bank employee computers, Carbanak would create fake accounts in banks around the world. These accounts belonged to fictional individuals with carefully constructed identities, complete with fake documentation and financial histories. Then, impersonating bank managers, they would authorize wire transfers from their target banks to these fake accounts. The amounts were carefully calculated to avoid triggering automatic fraud detection systems. $50,000 here, $100,000 there. Individual transactions that seemed routine but collectively represented millions of dollars flowing into Carbanak's network of shell accounts. Attack Vector 2. ATM cash-out operations. But Carbanak's most dramatic theft method involved turning ATMs into personal cash dispensers. Using their access to bank networks, they would locate ATMs connected to the same system and install remote control software. This software allowed them to command ATMs to dispense cash at predetermined times, without requiring any physical card or PIN entry. Carbanak would coordinate with networks of money mules, individuals who would be stationed at specific ATMs at exact times to collect the dispensed cash. These operations were timed to the minute, with mules receiving text messages telling them exactly when and where to collect money. Attack Vector 3. Balance manipulation. Perhaps the most sophisticated aspect of Carbanak's operation was their ability to manipulate account balances without actually stealing money, at least not immediately. They would identify accounts belonging to wealthy individuals or businesses and temporarily inflate their balances by millions of dollars. Then they would transfer the inflated amounts to their own accounts. Afterward, they would restore the original account balances, making it appear as though nothing had happened. The stolen money seemed to materialize from nowhere, creating a perfect crime that left no obvious victims. By 2014, Carbanak had infiltrated banks in over 40 countries. Their network included major financial institutions in the United States, Europe, Asia, and Latin America. But this wasn't a random spread of attacks. Carbanak had systematically targeted banks based on their security vulnerabilities, their connection to international wire transfer networks, and their geographic usefulness for money laundering operations. The organization operated like a multinational corporation, with specialized departments for different aspects of their criminal enterprise. Technical specialists handled malware development and network infiltration. Social engineers crafted phishing emails and fake documentation. Money laundering experts managed the complex web of shell companies and fake accounts needed to clean stolen funds. Money managers coordinated the global network of money mules and cash pickup operations. Each department operated independently, using encrypted communication channels and code names to protect the overall organization. Carbanak wasn't just a hacker group. It was a sophisticated criminal enterprise with the organizational structure of a Fortune 500 company. They had HR departments, technical support, and even customer service for their money mules. Carbanak created detailed training materials for their money mules, complete with instructions on how to dress, how to behave at ATMs, and how to avoid security cameras. They provided fake identification documents and cover stories for anyone who was questioned. The organization even offered customer support to their network of accomplices, with dedicated communication channels for reporting problems or asking for guidance. By 2015, Carbanak's operations had reached industrial scale. On their most successful days, they could coordinate simultaneous cash-out operations across dozens of cities, stealing millions of dollars in a matter of hours. May 9th, 2015. International Withdrawal Day. Carbanak's most audacious operation occurred on May 9th, 2015. At exactly 1400 GMT, ATMs in 26 countries began dispensing cash without any cards being inserted. In Moscow, Bangkok, Mexico City, Mumbai, Lagos, and New York, money mules collected predetermined amounts from specific ATMs. The operation was timed with military precision, with each mule given exact coordinates, timing, and collection amounts. Within 6 hours, Carbanak had stolen over $45 million. But more importantly, they had demonstrated something that terrified banking security experts around the world. They could turn any ATM into their personal cash machine. The May 9th operation wasn't just theft. It was a demonstration. Carbanak was showing the banking world that they had achieved something we thought was impossible. complete remote control over our ATM networks. The coordinated nature of the May 9th operation finally caught the attention of international law enforcement. The FBI, Europol, and banking security teams began to realize they weren't dealing with typical cyber criminals. This was an organization capable of conducting military-style operations against the global financial system. The first major breakthrough in the Carbanak investigation came not from law enforcement, but from cybersecurity researchers at Kaspersky Lab in Moscow. In late 2014, Kaspersky researchers had begun noticing unusual network traffic patterns from several of their banking clients. Strange data packets were being transmitted from bank networks to servers in Eastern Europe. When Kaspersky analysts reverse-engineered the malware they found, they discovered something unprecedented. This wasn't typical financial malware designed to steal credit card numbers or banking passwords. This was a sophisticated cyber weapon designed to provide complete remote control over banking networks. The malware could capture screens, record keystrokes, control mouse movements, and even operate banking software as if a legitimate employee was using it. But the real shock came when Kaspersky began tracing the extent of the infections. They discovered that Carbanak's malware had infected banks in over 40 countries, with some institutions losing tens of millions of dollars without even realizing they had been compromised. When we first calculated Carbanak's total theft amounts, we thought we had made a mistake. No cybercriminal organization had ever stolen anywhere close to $1 billion. We rechecked our numbers multiple times before we believed them. Kaspersky's research findings triggered the largest international cybercrime investigation in history. The FBI, Europol, police forces from dozens of countries, and private security firms began coordinating their efforts to track down Carbanak. But the organization had spent years perfecting their operational security. They used encrypted communications, fake identities, and constantly changing command and control servers. Following the money proved nearly impossible. Carbanak had created a labyrinthine network of shell companies, cryptocurrency exchanges, and cash pickup operations that spanned 6 continents. The international investigation focused on identifying Anunak, Carbanak's mysterious leader. Intelligence agencies analyzed communication patterns, money flows, and technical capabilities to build a profile of the organization's mastermind. What they discovered was disturbing. Anunak wasn't just a skilled hacker. He was a strategic genius who had created a new model for international cybercrime. Unlike traditional criminal organizations that relied on violence and territorial control, Carbanak operated like a virtual corporation. They recruited talent based on technical skills rather than criminal connections. Many of Carbanak's operators didn't even know they were part of a criminal organization. They believed they were working for legitimate financial technology companies or security testing firms. The first arrests came in early 2015, when Spanish police captured several Carbanak money mules during a coordinated ATM cash-out operation. Under interrogation, these low-level operators provided crucial intelligence about Carbanak's communication methods and operational procedures. The money mules were just the tip of the iceberg, but they gave us our first real insight into how Carbanak operated. We realized we were dealing with an organization that had compartmentalized their operations like a professional intelligence agency. Cybersecurity experts began identifying and disrupting Carbanak's command and control servers. Each server provided new clues about the organization's technical infrastructure and communication methods. But Anunak and his core team remained elusive. They had anticipated law enforcement pressure and built their organization to survive even if significant portions were compromised. In March 2018, after 3 years of international investigation, Spanish police arrested the alleged leader of Carbanak in Alicante. The suspect, whose identity remains protected, was accused of orchestrating cyber attacks that stole over $1 billion from banks worldwide. But by then, the damage had been done. Carbanak had fundamentally changed the cybercrime landscape and forced the global banking industry to completely rethink their security approaches. Banks began implementing advanced behavioral analysis systems, isolated network architectures, and multi-factor authentication for all internal transactions. The ATM networks that Carbanak had so effectively compromised were redesigned with enhanced encryption and monitoring systems. Many banks implemented real-time fraud detection using artificial intelligence to identify unusual transaction patterns. Carbanak taught us that our greatest vulnerability wasn't our technology, it was our trust in our own employees. They showed us how human behavior could be weaponized against our security systems. The Carbanak investigation led to enhanced international cooperation on cybercrime and new protocols for sharing threat intelligence between banks and law enforcement agencies. But security experts warn that Carbanak's techniques have been copied by other criminal organizations around the world. 5 years after the height of Carbanak's operations, the banking industry has invested billions of dollars in cybersecurity improvements. Advanced monitoring systems now watch for the behavioral patterns that Carbanak pioneered. But cybersecurity experts know that Carbanak represented an evolution in criminal methodology that cannot be reversed. They demonstrated that in the digital age, the most valuable targets aren't physical vaults. They're the trust and procedures that hold our financial system together. Carbanak didn't just steal money, they stole our assumptions about how cybercrime worked. They showed us that the most dangerous criminals aren't the ones breaking down doors. They're the ones who convince you to open the door yourself. Intelligence agencies continue to track dozens of cybercriminal organizations that have adopted Carbanak's techniques. The methods that once seemed impossible have become standard tools in the cybercriminal toolkit. Advanced persistent threat groups now routinely use extended surveillance, behavioral mimicry, and psychological manipulation to compromise their targets. The Carbanak case fundamentally changed how we understand the relationship between technology and trust. In a world where everything is connected, the most dangerous weapons aren't malware or hacking tools. They're the human vulnerabilities that no security system can completely protect against. Bank employees now receive extensive training on social engineering techniques and behavioral security awareness. Many institutions have implemented zero-trust security models that assume all internal communications could be compromised. But the fundamental challenge remains: how do you secure a system that depends on human trust and cooperation? Unwitting and his Carbanak organization may have been disrupted, but their legacy lives on in every phishing email, every social engineering attack, and every cyber criminal who realizes that the easiest way to rob a bank isn't to break in. It's to convince the bank to give you the keys.